As the last wisps of atmosphere dissipated, the vast, curved horizon of Mars rose like a crimson behemoth from the dusty, crimson plain. Commander Lewis stood at the edge of the landing module, his eyes squinting against the glare of the dual suns. The landscape before him was a labyrinth of ancient riverbeds, their serpentine courses now frozen in time, a testament to a planet that had once flowed with water, but now was as dry as the moon. To his left, the modules of the terraforming complex stretched like a metallic serpent, its components labeled with stenciled letters that seemed to shimmer in the fading light. It was an engineering marvel, one that had taken humanity nearly a century to complete. And yet, as Lewis gazed out upon the barren expanse, he couldn't shake the feeling that they had merely scratched the surface of this unforgiving world. The voice of Mission Control, relayed from the orbiting Aurora, crackled in his earpiece. "Commander Lewis, this is Houston. We're reading green across the board. The Mars Colonization Initiative is go for Phase 2. Lewis nodded, his thoughts already racing ahead to the next stage of their endeavor. It was a momentous day, one that would change the course of human history. And yet, as he gazed up at the rust-hued sky, he felt an unshakable sense of trepidation, as if the planet itself was warning him that they were mere intruders, trespassers on a world that still held secrets beyond their comprehension. The hiss of the life support systems, the soft murmur of the crew, and the steady beep of the consoles created a familiar symphony of sounds that accompanied Lewis as he made his way to the central hub of the modules. The air was thick with the smell of ozone, welded metal, and the faint tang of burned coffee. Dr. Patel, the chief scientist, was already seated at the main console, her eyes darting between the banks of screens and the holographic display projecting above the central console. Her eyes flickered towards Lewis, a look of intense focus etched on her face. "Commander, we're experiencing some unusual energy fluctuations in the North Quadrant," she said, her voice low and measured. "It's not quite what we expected. I recommend we adjust the resonance frequency of the terraforming grids to compensate." Lewis nodded, his mind already racing ahead to the implications. "Run the simulations, Doctor. I want to know what we're dealing with." As Patel's fingers danced across the console, Lewis turned to face the rest of the crew, his eyes locking onto the soft-spoken Dr. Lee, who was busy analyzing the planet's seismic data. "Jim, what can you tell me about the geological activity in the area?" Lee looked up, his eyes squinting behind his wire-rimmed glasses. "Commander, I'm picking up some unusual patterns. It's almost as if the planet itself is..." A sudden jolt rocked the module, throwing the crew off balance. The lights flickered, and the air thickened with an electric tension. Lewis's gaze snapped towards the view screen, where a swirling vortex of crimson dust and debris was erupting from the North Quadrant, as if the very fabric of Mars itself was beginning to unravel. The console alarms blared to life, casting an eerie glow over the frantic crew. Lewis's voice cut through the chaos. "Report!" Dr. Patel's fingers flew across the console, her eyes darting between the readings. "It's a massive energy release, Commander. The terraforming grids are oscillating wildly. We're looking at a potential feedback loop." Lewis's gaze locked onto the view screen, where the swirling vortex had grown to monstrous proportions, its center churning with an otherworldly power. The module shook again, throwing the crew off balance. "Shut down the grids, Patel," Lewis barked. "We need to." The lights flickered, died, and then surged back to life, casting an eerie strobe effect over the panicked crew. The console screens began to spew out error messages, as the very fabric of the module systems began to unravel. Dr. Lee's voice cut through the din. "Commander, I'm reading. It's impossible. Mars is altering its own gravitational fields." The module lurched again, throwing the crew to the floor. Lewis's vision blurred as the gravity seemed to shift and writhe around him. The air was filled with the stench of ozone and burned wiring. Suddenly, the lights died, plunging the module into darkness. The silence was oppressive, as if the very planet itself was holding its breath. In the darkness, Lewis felt the weight of the unknown pressing in upon him, as if the secrets of Mars were about to be revealed. secrets that humanity might not be prepared to handle. As the darkness stretched on, Lewis's ears strained to pick up any sound, his heart pounding in his chest. The silence was oppressive, a palpable force that seemed to be crushing the air from his lungs. Suddenly, a faint, pulsing glow began to emanate from the view screen, casting an ethereal light over the frozen crew. The image on the screen coalesced into a swirling pattern of crimson and gold, as if the very essence of Mars was being distilled into a visual representation. Lewis's gaze was drawn to the center of the screen, where a symbol seemed to be taking shape, a glyph that defied recognition, its curves and angles twisting in impossible ways. The glyph pulsed with an otherworldly energy, as if it was a gateway to dimensions beyond human comprehension. Dr. Patel's voice whispered in his ear, "Commander, I think it's trying to communicate with us." Lewis's eyes locked onto the symbol, transfixed by its hypnotic power. As he gazed deeper, he felt the boundaries of his mind begin to stretch, as if the very fabric of reality was being rewritten before his eyes. "Commander," Patel's voice whispered, her tone laced with a mix of awe and terror. "I think we're being invited." The symbol on the screen began to ripple, as if an unseen force was drawing them closer. Lewis felt the gravity of the situation shift, as the crew's fate hung in the balance. They were on the cusp of something momentous, something that could redefine humanity's place in the universe. With a deep breath, Lewis steeled himself for the unknown, his voice barely above a whisper. "Very well, we accept the invitation." As soon as the words left Lewis's lips, the module was bathed in a warm, golden light. The air seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, as if the very fabric of space-time was being reshaped to accommodate an unseen presence. The crew, frozen in awe, watched as the glyph on the view screen began to swirl, its curves and angles unfolding like a blooming flower. The symbol grew, filling the screen, and then burst forth in a brilliant flash of light that seemed to envelop the entire module. When the light faded, the crew found themselves standing at the edge of a vast, elliptical chamber. The walls, floor, and ceiling were crafted from a glittering, crystalline material that refracted light into a kaleidoscope of colors. Lewis's gaze was drawn to the far end of the chamber, where a glowing, crystalline entity hovered, radiating an aura of ancient wisdom. The entity's central core pulsed with a soft, blue light, as if it was the heart of the planet itself. The entity spoke, its voice like a gentle breeze in the minds of the crew. "We have awaited your arrival, travelers from Earth. We have watched your species unfold, like a fragile, yet resilient, leaf on the winds of time." Lewis felt a sense of wonder, tempered by a dash of trepidation, as he stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "We come in peace. We mean no harm to Mars or its secrets." The entity's light pulsed softly, as if in consideration. "Your species has walked the razor's edge between cooperation and destruction. We propose a partnership. Join us, and together, we shall reshape the destiny of the cosmos." Lewis hesitated, the weight of the entity's words settling upon him like a mantle. He glanced at his crew, searching for some insight, but their faces were etched with a mix of awe and uncertainty. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, as Lewis pondered the entity's offer. Would they forge a new path, one that would redefine the course of human history, or would they retreat, leaving the secrets of Mars to slumber, untouched, for eternity?